Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn about the broader meanings of democracy. In this chapter, we have considered the meaning of democracy in a limited and descriptive sense. We have understood democracy as a form of government. This way of defining democracy helps us to identify a clear set of minimal features that a democracy must have. So, what should be there in democracy? This is the minimal feature of democracy that means sometimes we think that it is a form of government, it works as a government. And if we define the democracy, then we think about the representative democracy, means where representatives take decision on behalf of the people. In India also, there is a representative form of democracy. All the decisions are taken by the representatives of the people. You have already read about this in the previous classes. In the countries we call democracy, all the people do not rule, means people do not rule. So then if people do not rule, who rules? A majority is allowed to take decision on behalf of all the people, and they are called representatives. Even the majority does not rule directly, the majority of people rule through their elected representatives. This becomes necessary because modern democracy involves such a large number of people that it is physically impossible for them to sit together and take a collective decision. So why do we need a representative form of government? Why the people cannot why do the people do not rule directly? What are the reasons behind it? Because it is not physically possible for all the people to sit together and take collective decisions. That's why we need representatives who take decision on behalf of the people. That's why we, in a democratic country, there is a representative form of government, and all the decisions are taken by the representatives on behalf of the people. And in modern democracies, there is a large number of people involved in taking decisions. So, and it is physically not possible for all the people to sit together and take a collective decision. That's why we need a representative form of a government. Even if they could, suppose if they could, the citizen does not have the time, the desire, or the skill to take part in all the decisions. Means if they could, the citizen does not have the time, the desire, or the skills to take part in all the decisions. This gives us a clear but minimal understanding of democracy. This clarity helps us to distinguish democracies from non-democracies. But it does not allow us to distinguish between a democracy and a good democracy. Okay, we are able to distinguish between a democratic and non-democratic country, but we are not able to distinguish between a good democracy and a democracy. So it does not allow us to see the operation of democracy beyond government. For this, we need to turn to broader meanings of democracy. That's we need to learn the broader meanings of democracy. Sometimes we use democracy for organizations other than the government. Just read these statements. We are a very democratic family. Whenever a decision has to be taken, we all sit down and arrive at a consensus. My opinion matters as much as my father's. We are a democratic family, means all the decisions are taken after discussion in the family members. So my opinion also matters as much as my father's opinion. So I do not like teachers who do not allow students to speak and ask questions in the class. I would like to have teachers with democratic temperament. Means if teachers are not allowing their students to ask questions between the chapters, so this cannot be called a democratic form of teaching. Means I like the teachers, those who have democratic temperament, means those who are of a democratic nature. One leader and his family members decide everything in this party. How can they talk of democracy? If one leader or the other members of his family take all the decision or decide whatever they want, it cannot be called a democracy. These ways of using the word democracy go back to its basic sense of a method of taking decisions. A democratic decision involves consultation. As you know that we have already discussed in a lot that in democracy means all the decisions are taken after a lot of discussions and consultations and consent of all those who are affected by that decision. Those who are not powerful have the same say in the taking the decision as those who are powerful. Means there is no discrimination made between the poor and the rich. All people are considered equal. There is no inequality. There is no inequality. This can apply to a government or family or any other organization. Thus, democracy is also a principle that can be applied to any sphere of life. In this way, we can explain that democracy is like a principle, is also a principle that can be applied to any sphere of life. Sometimes we use the word democracy not to describe any existing government but to set up an ideal standard that all democracies must aim to become. So, for forming an ideal government, we need democratic temperament. So, what is that? True democracy will come to this country only when no one goes hungry to bed. So, what should be the objective of democracy? And what should be the consequences of democracy? Or how can we say that this democratic government is an ideal form of government if no one no one sleeps without food, and if everyone is satisfied and no one is poor in our country, then we can say that our democratic government is the best government. True democracy will come to this country only when no one goes hungry to bed. In a democracy, every citizen must be able to play equal role in decision making. For this, you do not need just an equal right to vote. Means what has given us democracy? A democracy has given us political rights. That is, it has given us right to vote. Every citizen needs to have equal information. But besides this right to vote, the citizens should have equal right to know about the policies of government, or they may equally get information, and the basic education should be the first priority, should be the basic priority of the government. Equal resources and a lot of commitment to the people. If we take these ideals seriously, then no country in the world is a democracy. If we take these examples that we discussed here, that ट्रू डेमोक्रेसी क्या कहती है कि कोई भी व्यक्ति अगर भूखा सोता है तो डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री एक आइडियल कंट्री नहीं हो सकती, आइडियल डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री नहीं हो सकती। और एक लोकतांत्रिक देश के अंदर अगर प्रत्येक जो नागरिक है इतना उसको होना चाहिए कि उसको डिसीजन मेकिंग में सबका इक्वल साझेदारी होनी चाहिए, और अकेले राइट टू वोट के अलावा उसे इक्वल इन्फॉर्मेशन गेन करने का अधिकार होना चाहिए, बेसिक एजुकेशन प्राप्त करने का अधिकार होना चाहिए, इक्वली रिसोर्सेज को ऑब्टेन करने का अधिकार होना चाहिए, और लॉट ऑफ कमिटमेंट, बहुत सारी कमिटमेंट ऐसी की होनी चाहिए। तो अगर ये सब चीज़ें की अगर बात करें तो कोई भी कंट्री जो है विश्व के अंदर डेमोक्रेटिक नहीं है। येट एन अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी एज एन आइडियल रिमाइंड्स अस ऑफ व्हाई वी वैल्यू डेमोक्रेसी. It enables us to judge an existing democracy and identify its weaknesses. It helps us to distinguish between the minimal democracy and a good democracy. So, democracy, these points help us that we may be able to distinguish between a good democracy and a democracy. In this book, we do not deal much with this expanded notion of democracy. Our focus here is with some core institutional features of democracy as a form of government. Next year you will read more about democratic society and ways of evaluating our democracy. At this stage we just need to note that democracy can apply to many spheres of life. Means democracy जो है बहुत सारे हमारे जीवन के क्षेत्रों में लागू होती है, and that democracy can take many forms, and इसके बहुत सारे रूप होते हैं. It has many forms. There can be various ways of taking decision in a democratic manner as long as the basic principles of consultations as on equal basis is accepted. The most common form of democracy in today's world is rule through people's elected representatives. If we rule through the people's elected representatives, then we can say that it is a democratic country. We shall read more about that in chapter 3, but if the community is small, there can be other ways of taking democratic decisions. Means if the country is small, the population is small, then we can take decision collectively, means all the people can sit together and take decisions. So there can be the participation of all people directly. This is how Gram Sabha should work in a village. Can you think of some other democratic ways of decision making? You can tell. This also means that no country is a perfect democracy. The features of democracy that we discussed in this chapter provide only the minimal condition of a democracy. What are the minimal conditions to become a country, a democratic country? किसी देश को democratic बनने के लिए what are the minimal conditions required? This doesn't make an ideal democracy. Every democracy has to try to realize the ideals of democratic decision making. This cannot be achieved once and for all. This requires a constant effort to save and strengthen democratic forms of decision making. What we do as citizens can make a difference to making our country more or less democratic. This is the strength and the weakness of democracy. ये strength भी और weakness भी है. The fate of the country depends not just on what the rulers do, but mainly on what we as citizens do. जो देश का जो भाग्य है किसके ऊपर निर्भर करता है? रूलर्स क्या करते हैं उस पर नहीं, कि हम नागरिक होते हुए हमारा क्या फर्ज बनता है, हम क्या करते हैं, इसके ऊपर भी फेट ऑफ द कंट्री डिपेंड्स. दिस इज व्हाट डिस्टिंग्विश्ड democracy from other governments. Other forms of government like monarchy, dictatorship or one party rule do not require all citizens to take part in decision or politics. In fact, most non-democratic governments would like citizens not to take part in politics. But democracy में ऐसा नहीं होता. Democracy allows everyone to take part in politics or other decision makings. So, but democracy depends on active political participation by all the citizens. That is why a study of democracy must focus on democratic politics. In this way, we have completed this chapter, and now it is time to take tests. So tomorrow I'll take test. So be ready for that test. Make good preparation for your exam. If you feel any kind of problem, feel free to contact me. And as you know that we are doing the revision, and now I have re-explained this chapter thoroughly. If you again feel any problem, you can discuss with me, you can contact me, you can call me, you can send me any WhatsApp, you can send messages on my WhatsApp number and tell me your problems. So make preparation for your test. Thanks and have a nice day.